Like you, even I've been reading a lot of articles and news linked to Afghanistan, and it breaks our hearts to learn about the situation in Afghanistan and the difficulties the people in Afghanistan have to go through. What if I was in that situation? I would have also had some dreams. I would have some savings to make those dreams come true. But unfortunately, in Afghanistan, all of those are currently put on a pause. I hope that pause is not for long, but that is the situation as of now. Welcome to our channel. This is One Way Runway and I'm Rahul. Today we are going to talk about how a war impacts investments. Now, everyone has dreams, everyone has a plan or a path to achieve that dream or that goal. And usually this involves saving and investing your income. Although Afghanistan did not have a strong stock market, but I'm sure people in Afghanistan would have other sources of investments like realty, in gold, in cash, etc. If you do a simple Google search on the impact of war on investments, you will come across news articles that predominantly define the impact of wars on the US stock market. Now, this may not necessarily be the best example for it. Now, why that is the case, we'll come to that later. I get it, this is a very pessimist way of looking at things, thinking of your investments from a war perspective, but I think this is something that you should know. It is not something that you may ever require to plan for, but wars are generally not planned 5 to 10 years in advance. So when we address this topic, I would like to take it up in 3 different chapters. Through these chapters, I want to convey the 3 important aspects involved with the impact of war on your investments. The first chapter will be on perspectives. So it depends greatly on where you are or where your investments are when there is a war. The second chapter will be what will happen to your investments during the war. And the third and final chapter will be what do you need to do during such a situation. Again, I'm not saying that this is something that will happen, and this may be a very pessimist way of looking at it, but I think it is important to know at the least. The reason I was not really convinced with having USA as the prime example is because the world wars, which were the biggest wars in modern history, have not been fought actively across all of US at least. But Germany and France are 2 interesting options that you should read about in terms of how war, particularly the World War, impacted them. And in that as well, where Germany was on the losing side and France was on the winning side. So it impacts both those countries in very different ways. And that is exactly what I want to cover in the chapter Perspectives. Before we discuss what happens to Germany or France, let's just understand it in 2 parts. So one is where there is active involvement. So for example, if there are 2 countries that are at war, country A and country B, those 2 countries are actively involved in the war. Now, if you are in country C, then you may be passively involved. It depends on the level of correlation your economy has with those 2 economies. So in this particular situation, wherein your investments and you yourself probably are in country C, which is passively involved with the war, the worst case scenario could be that there will be high volatility in the stock market, and thus your assets may get impacted like it does in any of such situations that have happened in the recent past. It will not be a very dramatic impact on your economy or your stock market. But for countries A and B, the impact will be huge. In some cases, however, there have been surprises. If you do dig a bit deeper, you will learn that at some point during the World War, the stock market actually went up in some of the countries. Now, why that would have happened is a big discussion. For now, let's imagine those 2 countries at war. If country A ends up being on the winning side and country B ends up being on the losing side, the outcome of the war will be very different from an investment point of view for both those countries. So if A wins, in all likelihood, its stock markets will improve greatly post-war. But for country B, it may actually depend on what country A wishes to do with country B's economy. So as a retail investor, you will not have control over the outcome of the war, whether you'll end up being on the winning side or on the losing side. And this is where luck or risk plays a part. This concludes chapter 1, Perspectives. In the next chapter, we will cover what happens during the war to your investments. Do let us know if this topic makes any sense to you, or do you think it is actually not worth it to plan for anything as cataclysmic or as unpredictable as a war. I'll see you soon on our next video. Till then, take care and see you soon.